Hiya, and welcome back to another very exciting video on this channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about things you can do before actually animating a scene, things that will help prevent issues and notes down the line. Share some ideas on preparation, make your job easier. But before we get to that, maybe we should address the elephant in the room. Yep, the beard is gone. Those who have known me for a while know that the beard comes and goes, right? So if you like the beard, don't be sad, it'll be back. It always comes back. I just hope it's doing okay, wherever it is. So the first thing to do might be obvious to some people, that would be to watch the leica. The animatic, there's a few different terms for it, so whatever applies to your case, just watch it. When I say watch the leica, I mean watch the whole thing, the whole episode, the movie, whatever. Just watch the whole thing before getting to your sequence, and the reasons for that will become a little obvious later on. But really watch the whole thing to understand the themes and the story beats that come up. It's just a good idea to watch the whole thing to know what you're getting into. Now, after you've watched the leica, the next thing to do would be to go through the designs. Character designs, mostly. Prop designs can be helpful sometimes, but the most important thing usually is the characters. Seeing the costumes, if there are any that come up, any new characters. After having watched the leica, you'll see how everything fits into the story, right? Now you have the building blocks. And at this point, you can start looking at your sequence, the scenes that have been assigned to you, and the work ahead specifically for you to do and are responsible for. And as you're analyzing your assignment, it's good to ask yourself some questions like, how does it fit into the story? What's the purpose of these scenes? For instance, every time there's a cut, every time there's a new shot, we're most likely trying to introduce some new information for the audience. It's very helpful to understand the purpose of each shot. How do all the pieces fit in together to tell the story? So the next thing to do after you understand how your assignment fits into the whole is to check continuity. Look at the scenes and sequences before and after what you'll be working on, and then take note of hookups. Look for things that need to follow from the previous scenes and into the next ones. Even if they're not assigned to you, it's very helpful to be aware of these things. Check for staging. Where are the characters in the scene, in the environment? You don't want the characters popping right all over the place. Also check for props. When do they come into play? When and how do they disappear, right? Does a character put it in their pocket? Do they throw it out? Do they drop it on the ground? If a prop falls to the ground, from that point on, you have to track it in that sequence. When should it appear? Things shouldn't appear and disappear without a logical reason. Also, if you've watched the leica in its entirety and you understand the episode, you should be aware of setups and callbacks. And so ask yourself, do any of your scenes set something up that comes back later? Or is it a callback to something that happened previously? Where are the characters in their journey in this story, right? You might have this story where characters gradually get more and more scared and things build up. Well, if it's building up, you don't want to go too hard too early, right? You need to see that progression. That's why it's very, very important to understand where your scenes fit into the story. Also be mindful that you might need to collaborate with the other artists, the other animators, to make it work. You might be working on some animation that another animator could use in their sequence, or another animator might be working on something that you could use. You can reach out to them and collaborate. Maybe there's something that you can both use, and so you can trade, right? You can trade work. Say, I'll focus on these things, you could work on those, and then we'll share, right? Something else I like to do before starting any of the posing, any of the animating, is to open up each scene individually and make sure that everything I need is there. As much as possible, I try to work with the assumption that things can get missed. It's easy for some things to slip through the cracks. Sometimes a scene will be assembled or set up with characters in the wrong costume or missing props and that kind of thing. I always like to flag these early on, because if I don't look for these potential issues, then as I'm working later on, then I might be stuck waiting for things to happen. I might be stuck waiting for other departments to address these issues, and then I'm not being productive. Whereas if I note these things early on, then at least I can skip over to another scene or another part of the scene and stay busy that way while the other issues get taken care of. Before animating, I also like to plan my acting. So what I mean by this is listen to the audio again and again and understand where the important beats are so that you can focus your energy on those moments. It might also be helpful at this point to act out the scene and see what comes up spontaneously. Or if there's a hard action, then act it out, record yourself doing it. Understand the body mechanics behind it, particularly if it's something challenging, so that you understand what needs to happen. I remember something in the Animator Survival Kit that Richard Williams called the Thursday Animator, where he did this experiment. So he got this scene that he needed to animate, and he spent Monday planning and acting it out and just thinking about what he would do. And Tuesday he did the same thing, just pushing it. And what happened was there was this creative buildup, kind of like coiling up a spring, just pushing and creating that pressure, right? Until near the end of the week on Thursday, he just let it out and it just exploded. And if I recall correctly, although he thought it was a helpful experiment, what came out, as creative as it was very disorganized. And so he had to spend some time later on trying to put things back together in an orderly fashion. I don't know that I go that far in the preparation phase, but it's not uncommon for me to spend half a day just planning out the work that's ahead for the week. And a lot of that comes with analyzing the scene or the sequence like I'm describing now. Now in this planning phase, I also find it's very helpful to find the fun in a scene. Try to find something in every shot that you'll enjoy doing, something to look forward to, or at least in your sequence, find one magical moment, right? One magical moment that you can look forward to animating. The truth is you won't enjoy every sequence that's assigned to you, but if you can find something to enjoy in every one of them, then at least it makes the work more bearable. And then you can move on to the next thing and hopefully, it'll be better then. Now the last thing to do before you get to animating is to prioritize your work. Now I talked a little bit about collaborating with others. So part of that is anticipating what others need from you and what you can expect from others. So with that, you can better understand which scenes you should tackle first and which ones are maybe lower priority. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that scenes vary in their difficulty level. So some scenes are easier to do than others. Some tend to be more tedious. Some have more characters, right? Some things come easier to some animators than others. And so it's helpful to be able to anticipate which ones will be more time consuming, which parts of your sequence need more attention. And I would strongly encourage to prioritize those over the easy scenes. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, one reason is we have to remember that, most animation anyways is a team effort and life happens, right? So it can happen that sometimes you're working on an episode and let's say maybe you get sick, so you miss some time. And when there are deadlines, sometimes some of the work needs to be reassigned, right? Now, if you tackle the tougher scenes first, then the tendency is for the easy scenes to be reassigned, and that's not so bad. But say you tackle the easy scenes first, and then things need to get reassigned. Well, the deadline's coming up and you're dropping this difficult load of work on other people. And the question is, do you want to be that person? Now, when scenes get reassigned regularly, it doesn't look good for anyone. But when the scenes to be reassigned are difficult ones, time-consuming, tedious ones, it looks even worse, and you can build a bad reputation very quickly when that happens. But the other thing that happens is our energy levels vary. No one is on their A game 100% of the time. I know for myself, I have a lot more energy at the beginning of the week than I do at the end. And so anything that demands a lot of brain power for the posing or the planning or whatever, I prefer to tackle first so that when I get to being tired, then at least the work is relatively easy. I know someone who feels they have more energy in the morning than they do in the afternoon. Their tendency is to take on the difficult stuff, the posing, the problem solving, all of that early in the day. And then after lunch, they can just relax in the afternoon doing lip sync or, just little polishing things in animation. So find what works for you and think about how to manage your energy and your stress. I feel like probably this kind of approach also prevents burnout. If you find yourself needing to push hard regularly, there might just be something in the planning or the way you prioritize the work that could maybe be improved. And maybe one of the last things to consider when you're prioritizing work, I've talked a little bit about collaborating with others, but I'd like you to also think about the supervisor. The supervisor has a team. The size would depend on the production and the studio. But if you put yourself in the supervisor's shoes and you see the work coming in from 5, 10, 20 people they're supervising, whatever, it's easier for a supervisor to work with a steady stream of scenes coming in. Supervisors have a lot on their plate. They have a lot of responsibilities they need to deal with. And it can be very inconvenient, to say the least, for a lot of work to come flooding in at the same time, especially if they know that an animator will be left waiting on notes. So as a supervisor, we like to make sure everyone always has something going on, some way to stay busy. One of the worst things to happen for a supervisor is for someone to be left waiting, that they can't work. So a supervisor might be forced to shift priorities to try and keep things going, to try and keep the work rolling. But sometimes there are fires to stomp out. And when you're trying to deal with a fire and then you have this happen, and it just becomes more complicated, more stressful for everyone. And so I would ask to consider how your approach affects others, your supervisor, the team, other departments, which is part of why I think planning is very important, because a lot of issues can be flagged early and dealt with early, and in a way that doesn't hinder too much progress, that things can keep moving for everyone. Anyways, these are all things to consider when prioritizing your work. Don't feel that you need to tackle your work chronologically, like in the order that the scenes come in. That's usually not the best way to handle things for, a lot of the reasons that I stated here. Now, in the next video, I will discuss a tool that comes in very handy for just about everything I've discussed in this video. But for now, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Animate away. Beard is gone. The beard is gone. The beard is gone. It's on the street. What?